Hi, my name is Liz. I'm with Big Hairy Dog, and we're going to be starting in just a bit here. We're going to give people a few more minutes to go ahead and sign in. But this is going to be a webinar on B9 reporting. We're going to be going through a few different items here. You can see the agenda is now on the screen. If anybody's having issues seeing anything, please let me know. We're going to be going over some report types, creating those reports, report groups, and troubleshooting a few reports. And so in order to really go ahead and get a good understanding of V9 reporting, we're not only going to be looking at V9 Reports Viewer, we're actually also going to be looking at Crystal Reports and our PSQL Developer. And so that third one might be, something new to most people, but we want to go ahead and make sure that everyone understands what exactly goes into building a report that we can go ahead and view using Retail Pro's Reports Viewer. So again, my name is Liz. We're going to be starting here in just a little bit. Just going to go ahead and hang tight and hopefully get a few more attendees in. Thanks so much. All right, so we have most of everyone we expected, so I'm sure a few other people will be trickling in here in a second. But my name is Liz. I'm with Big Hairy Dog, and today we're going to be going over our V9 reporting. To start, we're going to take a look at my reports viewer. Remember, that is a separate executable from Retail Pro, and this can be launched independently. If you guys are juggling licenses, if maybe we have 4 different workstations but only 3 licenses, which means one of those workstations always has to be out of Retail Pro, you will still be able to access your reports. Reports does not take up a license because it is a separate executable. And so I already have my reports right over here launched. The reports, for those of you who are a little bit newer, even just thinking about upgrading to version 9. Like I said, it is a separate executable, but all of the same permissions or all the same users' logins are going to be the same as you would use in your regular Retail Pro 9 proper. Really, the only thing we have to make sure is that those users have access to reports, has access to running reports, and our reports, just like in our version 8, have different access and security levels. So if there's certain reports where our associates are allowed to run, but maybe we don't want them running some of our, more more important vendors or reports that show cost and all of that good stuff, we'll assign that to a higher security permission level, and then we can go ahead and avoid those users using those reports. They won't even have access to them. They'll just be all grayed out. And of course, those securities are going to be pretty superfluous. So if you, in your mind, think security level 1 should be the top tier, most secure, we can make it so. And if you think security level 4 should be the top tier, most secure, we will go ahead and build it that way for you. So you have a lot of control there. All right. So enough of that. We're going to go ahead and jump right into reports. So when you open up Retail Pro Reports, it drops you into essentially this blank screen here. There are a few kind of set it and forget it settings that we like to go ahead and hit. Just in case we have set those and forgot about them a little too long, I'm going to go ahead and jump in. So under Options, Workstation Preferences, we have a few things I like to go ahead and start at. Actually, under my appearance, not my general, over here, you have the option to go ahead and pre-filter and only show active records. And that's going to be despite of what we have in our filter. So if we have it here, it's system-wide. Over here, the display report filter. Out of the box, this is set to none. I really like to go ahead and put it somewhere, whether that be in the first or the last page, just in case it gets printed, and then we always know what data this particular report is referring to. And then down over here, of course, under our printing preferences, printing, I just want to go ahead and be able to change some items, and I also want to go ahead and be able to print a range. That's another thing that some people don't get a chance to go ahead and do if they don't set it up first. But we're going to go ahead and cancel out of here. don't have to actually make any of those changes. Like I said, most of the time we'll go ahead and set that up for you, and we don't even walk you through that part. But if you notice that your reports never print with that filter and you need it on there, workstation preferences. All right. Other than that, we're going to go ahead and jump right into reports. And I want to just point out we have a few branches in our design tree up over here, or report tree. So reports is that main branch, but then we have reports in our custom folder, journals, lists, merchandise, other, and summary. If you don't see some of these directories like other, that just means that you don't have anything in that particular directory. Really, other is the only one you probably not have, but you can go ahead and open that up, and I'm going to show you how to do that. Normally, other, we have it special for those people that, they don't want to have to go through the entire customs folder, or, there's some slick ways of adding, editing the title so that way it's at the very, very top, it's kind of segregated. It's already come in here, hit edit, I can edit this title in my custom folder on the fly, add that little exclamation point. It's something I see people doing often. I'm going to go ahead and say OK there. Report has been saved. And you can see when it was here in our second place, now that exclamation point has brought it all the way up to the top of my list, and I don't have to go digging for it anymore. So that's one way I see people going ahead and getting out of that. Another way, and my preferred method, would be, again, to highlight on the report that we're looking for. We're going to go ahead and hit edit. And I'm actually going to go ahead and move that report type from my custom into my other directory. Like I said, I think I like to have one central location where I'm going to for all my reports that are going to be more specific to me and how I do my business. Our custom reports are beautiful and they're great, but they do cast a pretty wide net. All right, so there we go. So I went ahead and moved that, and now we can see it's in my other. See, personally, I have quite a bit in my other. A few of you might have only one or two. Really, again, we're going to go ahead and reserve that for our store-specific reports. All right, and then kind of talking about a little bit more, talking about report types a little bit more. The custom folder is going to be chock filled with reports from Big Hairy Dog. These are reports where we've taken those original journals, lists, merchandise reports, and summary reports, and we've edited them in some way. In my opinion, we do our best to make them a little bit more user-friendly, a little bit more readable, or just get a little bit more information onto the screen. And, we find that enough people are asking for these kinds of reports, so we put them all in the custom folder. If you haven't taken the time to go ahead and go look through your custom folders, I would definitely go ahead and suggest doing it. I'm going to be pointing out a few reports, and if you're, sitting there and you're realizing, hey, I don't have those reports in my custom folder, don't worry about it. Give us a call, or even, feel free to go ahead and let me know here in the webinar. I can take note of your store and your name. We can go ahead and set up a time for either myself or another technician to kind of drop in those additional reports. It doesn't take too long. We essentially are just going to need someone to get assigned it. All right. But like I said, besides that, the custom folder is going to be our Big Hairy Dog specific reports. You'll see all of our logos on there. In this is where you can go ahead and move items in and out of this folder really easily. You can rename really easily, as we've already done a little bit of. Next, we're going to go ahead and jump into journals. So journals are going to be the most detailed reports that you can get out of your Retail Pro. So this is where you're going to go ahead and find your receipt and item level information, your customers with detail. You'll see a lot of these reports have undetailed and detailed versions to kind of, be ready for whatever you need. Under lists, of course, this is going to be a little bit more self-explanatory. It is a list, whether that's a list of our central gift cards and gift certificates, one of my favorites to run in this particular branch of our reports, or a list of our customers, something that you can grab all of your customers from within Retail Pro without having to jump in and, select all and export to Excel. You can do that directly within a report. You can even go ahead and have if you take a look at this and you decide this is almost exactly what I need, but I need another field attached to this. Again, I'm going to go ahead and show you what goes into doing that in a little bit, and that is something that we can go ahead and help you out with. We can also get like our employee list, vendors. If we have multiple store locations and subsidiaries, we can get store and employee information by subsidiary. Under our merchandise, this is where we're going to go ahead and see a lot of our inventory specific reporting. And one thing I did want to point out that I didn't get a chance to point out in the custom folder was this DT. So DT stands for data type. And when you're dealing with a report that has DT in the title, that means it is looking at multiple data types. So this is not a report that's going to only give you on hand or only give you sales, as you can see in a lot of these reports down here. It gives you both on-hand and sales, and this one in particular gives you on-hand, sales, received, and transferred, and adjustments by store. So that one's a bulkier report. And you'll notice with bulkier reports that tend to be looking at multiple data types, they can take a little bit longer to run, especially if you're running them for multiple stores or across subsidiaries, or if you just have that many items in your inventory. So there are certain things that you would run that DT on hand and sold, but if you really only need to see what you have on hand right now, a simple on hand by item would do and would go ahead and run that much faster. Again, the other one is going to look really different for everybody. And, on mine here, it's a little bit of a sandbox of a bunch of reports that I have worked on for people. So we're going to go ahead and have quite a bit in there. But again, these are going to be specific to your store. If you have any issues with the reports in this folder, give us a call again. Something might have happened to the package, which will make more sense as we go through and I show you guys what a package is. But we'll go ahead and talk a little bit more about errors you might experience in a moment. And then, of course, our summaries. So summaries are going to be that bird's eye view of everything that's going on. One of my favorite summary reports that I want to make sure that I take a moment to point out is my on hand by date. So we get a lot of questions about how do I check my inventory or check what my inventory was, at the end of a period or at the end of the year last year. And this is the answer to that. But there are a few things you have to consider when you're looking at this report. This report relies heavily on the delta. For those of you that don't remember or that are, again, new to V9 and don't know, the delta is where Retail Pro houses all of its statistical information, all of its math, essentially. And that runs every night. We set that up to run automatically. There are a few places that might not be able to run automatically if you have much higher security, but even in gift shops and like hospital gift shops, we try to set that up to run automatically so that you don't have to worry about it. Good way to go ahead and check when your delta was last updated is actually, you can see right down here within your reports what time that was last updated. And if you happen to be in your inventory, this is Retail Pro 9 proper. You come on down here, it's a little hard to see, I apologize, but it is down here, Delta last updated on right above my icons below. So we can see it was updated today. And so this, like I said, really does rely on the delta. A lot of our reports rely on the delta, but especially anything that's going to be dealing with statistics or your inventory on hand by date like this one, because it uses a delta to backtrace and to calculate your inventory. All right, and so let me go ahead and, sorry, just moving my GoToMeeting menu for just a moment. All right, but there we go, and I can go ahead and run this particular report. The other key thing to remember for this report is the period date. It should be the same day. So if we need our on hand for the end of the day for August 31st, I want to know exactly what my inventory started with July 1st. I would need to go ahead and come on in here and come on over to August 31st, and we're going to come back over to August 31st. Just a single day is what we need to be running this for, because it's a little hard to track on-hand quantity over a period of a week because, of course, we are selling items, so it doesn't know what to give you. So we're going to go ahead and hit OK there. And it'll take a moment, but there we go. It's like I said, this is one of my basic Retail Pro ones. We do have some Big Hairy Dog specific ones, but I can take a look at what was my on hand for the end of the month. And I can come all the way down here and see there's my store subtotals, and I can even compare that to what my current on hand is. All right, and so we have a question on where can we update the delta. It's a great question. Thank you so much, Antonio. So you can update the delta in a few places. So within reports, I'm going to go ahead and close this really quick. Yep. So within reports, if I just back out all the way to our main screen, so we have this update delta. So we can decide to do a full delta and a full delta update. And I'm going to actually run that because I want to show you guys it really doesn't take long. People do not have to be out of Retail Pro. It is completely tolerant. We're just going to go ahead and let that run for a second. And so I said it wasn't going to take long, of course. But the other place I want to show you is right within Retail Pro. This is probably the easier place to do it because everyone's in Retail Pro constantly. Again, from that main home screen, the Retail Pro home screen, we're going to go under Tools and Update Delta. Come on over here. Oh yeah, that's going. All right, and then when you do it from the Retail Pro home screen, though, you won't get this little bar that's going to go ahead and show you exactly where it is or anything like that. But we will get that Delta has been updated successfully. All right. So we got that question answered for right now. Sorry, just checking to see if we had any more questions. All right. So now that I got a chance to show you guys that beautiful inventory on hand by date, like I said, one of my favorite summaries to run, did want to go and show you guys a little bit more about what goes into these actual reports. So if we go ahead and jump back over here. So we went over our report types. The important thing when you're looking for a new report is understanding these types and understanding what kind of data do you need displayed. If it's just department level, then maybe a good summary is what we need to look at. If we need a lot of item level information or you need receipt level information for sales, then maybe we're going to go to a journal. If you want to go ahead and see what a specific vendor's merchandise, how it's moving this year versus last year. We might want to take a look at our merchandise reports or, of course, some of our custom reports. Oh, one thing I didn't get a chance to mention, but I will. I'm going to go ahead and open this up a little bit. So this is hard to get on, at least in my system. I have a smaller screen here, but we can absolutely open this up so you can go ahead and be able to read the entire report name in our custom folder. Especially in the custom folder, we really do try hard to put exactly what the report is going to give you in the name of the report itself. And so this is one of those Big Hairy Dog DT, so data type. We're looking at multiple data types. And it's going to be the TY-LY. So that is this year, last year. This is going to give you 2 date ranges so you can go ahead and compare your sales by department. And so if I go ahead and run this, my last year is going to look pretty horrid, but we can go ahead and enter that here and here. I wanted to point out that this actually has up to 12 date ranges, actually a little bit more if you want to count receive date and PO date. But the reason why this has 12 date ranges is because the package it's based off of has the ability to read up to 12 date ranges. And this is extremely helpful in my 12-month all trends by DCS, where that definitely does utilize all 12 date ranges. All right. In this case, although it's here in the parameter because it is a part of the package, the only thing that I have access to in this report are the first 2 date ranges. So if I were to run this, and there we go. So you can see I have my this year's quantity, that's my first date range, and my last year's quantity, that's our date range 2. You see in our filter criteria, this all still shows up because again, it's part of the package, just not in this report. And in order to see what is available for this report, I would have to open it up using Crystal Reports. I'm going to go ahead and do that next. We can go and take a look at what this looks like, what the guts of this report is going to look like. So I'm going to close this. All right, and so in order to open this up in Crystal Reports, I need to open up the actual report file, the RPT, and that's this guy up here. This So this under report path is under custom, and the file is called this BHD SPM1. And so I'm going to go ahead and open that up. So I have a window open to my custom folder, but really that's just on whatever drive Retail Pro is. For most people, it's going to be the R drive. In my setup, I do have it on the C drive, but I go into my Retail Pro 9 directory. And here, this is where people would normally go ahead and see, their actual executable, any additional plugins. You've probably been in here many times. Under reports, click in there. We can see all of the same directories. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into, this is my custom. So let's jump into custom. And now let's use BHD SPM1. All right, let's come on down. M112 sales. Here we go. This one is by department. So there we go. And you can see a lot of these have a very similar naming structure because these are all essentially the same report but summarized to different levels. We understand not everybody's going to be able to grab a copy of Crystal Reports and go through that training. So we want to go ahead and make sure that you have multiple versions of the same report that are going to give you what you need. So, but I'm going to open up this RPT. I'm just going to go ahead and double click it, and in my setup, again, because I have Crystal Reports on my computer, it opens up automatically. The report uses an invalid printer. That's totally fine. You're going to hit OK on that. You're going to get that on pretty much every report that you open up from the Custom Big Hairy Dog. We built them, and it was pointed as a certain printer when somebody built it, and we don't have that printer anymore. But that's fine. And so this is what the report actually looks like. When you take a look at, you can see all of the suppressed information. This is a larger report, so don't get too overwhelmed. I'm going to also go ahead and show you guys a basic item summary report in Crystal. But in order to get the report to display what we need it to display, we have to get a little bit more creative with our groupings and our sorting, essentially. But on this particular report, if I open up over here under my database fields, I can see, let me open this up a little bit further. I can see what package that this report is looking at. And within that package, there are a few fields. And these are all of the fields available to me within this package. And Crystal Reports allows me to go ahead and take these fields and display them onto a page and do some additional calculations as well. There's some actually over here, formulas that we can go ahead and do within Crystal Reports. So we don't necessarily need the package to calculate margin. I can go ahead and do that in a formula within Crystal. I just need the package to have my cost, my price, and my sales information, essentially. And so over here, you can see, again, this was a bigger package meant to hold that 12-day trend and being able to have access to all of those dates. So if I did want to go ahead and get, you can see over here the S1, S10 and 12 are a little out of, 10 and 11 and 12 a little out of order, but there's that S2. So these are the different sales ranges, the different date ranges it's referring to. On this report, we're only going to have S1 and S2 because remember, we only have 2 date ranges. But I'm going to go ahead and actually jump over here to another report that I have open, my sales item summary. So in our core reports, this is called our sales item summary with description 2. But I wanted to open this up because I've already done a little bit of editing to this particular report. This is actually something I'm working on for a client. But I did want to show you how easy it would be to go ahead and add something to this report. So for this particular client, besides attribute and size, they wanted one of our auxiliary fields. So remember, auxiliary fields in Retail Pro are used to track any additional information that we don't already have a native field for. And so, perhaps we have, size and attribute, but we also need somewhere where I can put an in-seam measurement, or somewhere where I can go ahead and put, a material if we did any kind of clothing. And so instead of going ahead and renaming description 3 or 2, which is also a possibility, we're just going to utilize one of the UDF fields. or one of the auxiliary fields. In this case, we've utilized auxiliary 3. So, like I said, we just opened this report up. I opened up the package, and auxiliary 3 is already there. So to get that change done, I'm just going to drag it onto the field. I'm going to go ahead and shrink it up a little bit because it doesn't quite fit. And now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and Control C one of my other titles, one of my other labels essentially. Pop it right there because then I know it has the proper format that I'm looking for. And then just enter this as, actually let's just go match. I actually need to double check how they abbreviate material. For right now, I'll just go ahead and put MAT. And then so down here, remember we just pulled it off of the report, so it has its default formatting. But I want it to match the rest of my report here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on description 1, part of the field that was already formatted correctly. I'm going to hit Format Painter, and then I'm going to just click on that auxiliary 3. You can see that Cruiser, well, I hope you guys can see that, but the Cruiser has turned into a little paintbrush symbol. So we're going to go ahead and click that. And there we go. Now auxiliary 3 is also formatted the way I want, the way the rest of the report is. And so that was super quick, super easy, and could be the difference between you guys having to run this report and 2 other reports to get the information you need. There's no need to do that. Just give us a call, let us know, and there you go. We can go ahead and get the report turned around for you pretty easily. If the report has the field in the package, I will go ahead and say with a little asterisk next to it. If the report has the field in the package already, these are really quick and super easy. If the report does not have the field within the package, then it gets a little bit messier. And of course, we're here for you guys in those cases. For anybody who has Crystal reports already and you are running into that, I'm going to go ahead and show you how we handle it. All right, but for right now, again, still within Crystal reports, this is that, if I go ahead and hit that file, save as, I want to show you guys, I had originally opened this from within my custom folder. So it's trying to save it back to that custom folder. And that's absolutely okay. This is something that I want to be a permanent change. I can leave it right there. In this case, what I actually want to do is I'm going to go ahead and come down to reports. And I'm just going to save it in my other folder under a slightly different name. All right, I'm going to go ahead and change it to web in honor of our webinar here. And I'm going to drop this in my other folder. All right, I'm going to, I don't even have to close Crystal. I'm going to just minimize it for right now. And then back over here in my reports viewer, I'm going to go ahead and actually, this is the report that I was looking at just a moment ago. Let me go ahead and find it one more time. There we go, sales item summary with description 2. Now, because I saved a copy of that report with the changes, if I were to run this right now, we would see that original report. It has description 2 and no auxiliary 3. We can actually go ahead and run that. Create a short date. It's going to go ahead and speak to the sales date range that you're looking at. And I have to open this up quite a bit. I don't have too many sales in this particular system. There we go. It got broken out pretty easily. And actually, this is a good example of something that you might want to go ahead and get removed. Not mission critical. We don't need to go ahead and, it doesn't hinder anything. But I am a single subsidiary. I don't need subsidiary grand totals because my grand total is my subsidiary grand total. So I might say, in addition to getting what I want on the screen, can you go ahead and also remove that subsidiary line? And of course, I can go ahead and do that. All right, we're going to go ahead and close the report and say yes. Remember, that was our original one. So that one's always going to stay over there. What I'm also going to do is come over here into the other folder. And no matter how much I look, I'm not going to go ahead and see that new report just yet. what I have to do first is I have to register the report. And I know a lot of you might not have seen this since the last, or maybe even since you went live. You saw us register some reports when we were setting you up in the beginning. But it is really, really easy, and especially if you're working off a report that already exists, you really can't go wrong. All right, so let's say, or this is the report that we were working on. And that report comes with a parameter list already mapped. So when you're registering a report, you do have to fill out this parameter list, and you have to go ahead and tell Retail Pro what to look up when it hits the data type lookup. And because we have it here already, I'm going to just hit my Windows key. I'm going to grab my snipping tool, I'm going to hit New, and I'm just going to take a little picture of this whole list. And there we go. Now I don't have to worry about starting and stopping. It's all right there for me. All right. So now that I stole that, actually, there's a little bit more to it. All right. Well, in my setup, my screen's a little too small to grab the whole thing. I can definitely keep going and grab as many as I need, as many snapshots as I need. I'm gonna cheat a little bit. I know what these parameters need to be, so I'm gonna go ahead and just move forward. So in the other directory, because that's where I want this, I'm going to go ahead and register a report. So I just have to be on a report somewhere in the directory. It doesn't matter what report you're on, and you're not going to unregister the report that you're on. You don't have to worry about that. We're just going to hit register report. You can enter a default name. All right, webinar item summary. I'll open this up. I'm going to jump in my other, because this is where I put it. I'm going to sort it by date modified. And here we go. There is that new RPT that I edited. I'm going to go ahead and say open here. And so there is also this part can sometimes take a second when it's trying to open, or this part here. What I do is I hover over that little reports icon down here, and that tends to speed it up. All right. So again, the only ones we need to pay attention to are the ones that say lookup in the type. And so over here, I need to go ahead and change this to invoice status. Invoice type. And I'm just going to keep going until I find the next lookup. Let me see. There we go. Maybe I missed that one. So yeah, employee names. Maybe I just misspelled it. All right, employee. There we go. Names. Employee names. We're going to keep going on down. Type on that one. Subsidiaries for subsidiary number. Store codes for store codes. DCS codes. Some of these, very self-explanatory. Others take a little bit. And another thing I wanted you to kind of I wanted you all to notice, this list is not actually in alphabetical order. You got a few places where things are close to each other, but then ultimately we have something like this: vendor codes after yes, no, before is active. Because of that, you do have to kind of type out sometimes quite a bit of the parameter name before it shows up, just like vendor codes here. Before I get to the C, I think it's stuck on like vendor UDF or something similar. All right, but let's go ahead and inventory UDF. The other nice thing about it, though, is that the UDF fields tend to be grouped together. So usually you can go ahead and just highlight over that none, hit the X. We use the X because no parameter starts with X. So as it doesn't know what you're looking for, it just drops you in the last place that you were. So that's easy for us to just arrow down and enter. Discount reasons. Active, no matter what, is always is active. Department codes. Class codes. And you'll notice that there's a lot of these that we're using and we're mapping, but they don't actually exist on the report. Again, that's because it's based on the package that the report is using. So although we did use auxiliary 3 on the report, we will still be forced to map all of the UDFs, not just aux3. All right, inventory UDF 5, UDF 6. And the other thing is that it doesn't actually jump over to start saying auxiliary. It just continues down and we get up to all inventory UDF 14, which is really our final auxiliary field. All right, and so UDF 3 or auxiliary 3, if you want to ever check how you can go ahead and figure out what, especially if you're using many auxiliary fields, you do want to go ahead and make sure that you're labeling them correctly. So we want to go ahead and take a moment. I'm jumping back into my Retail Pro system here, and I'm going to go into options, and I'm going to go into system preferences for a moment. Under system preferences, I'm going to jump down to local preferences, merchandise, and I'm going to jump into user defined / auxiliary. This out of the box is always going to drop you into whatever order it wants. So I'm going to go ahead and flip it to field number. And so you can see our aux3 is actually field number 9. So that's UDF 9 in my parameter list. All right, now that I know that, armed with that knowledge, I'm going to come over here. I just want you to see on the param name, we've been doing all of our work over here in the lookup name area. The param name is essentially what your filter is going to be called. So I'm going to go ahead and change this from UDF 9 to aux3. I'm just going to go ahead and write over that. All right, and now just doing a quick little make sure that I don't have any more of my lookup fields. I'm going to go ahead and hit save. If I did have a lookup field still open, it would give me an error that says lookup name or lookup type cannot be none. And that's referring to the none under lookup name over here. All right. And do you want to register another report? I'm going to say no. All right, perfect. So now that this is set, I'm going to come over here, and this is, again, my webinar item summary. I can go ahead and run this report, and here's that beautiful little pop-up box with all my filters. If I come down, I can see in the middle of my UDF 7, UDF 8, what was UDF 9 now reads auxiliary 3, appropriately reads auxiliary 3. And I can go ahead and start filtering and using this just like I could in my other report, but over there in my other report, it was not labeled correctly, and I also didn't have UDF on the screen. All right, so 2 important things to remember. Again, I'm going to go ahead and run this pretty open because I don't have a whole lot of data. Go ahead and run that. And there we go. And it just so happens, again, in my sandbox data, I'm just not utilizing auxiliary 3 as often. But anything that has aux3 listed is going to go ahead and show up here under what I labeled MAT for material. Close this. I'm going to go ahead and say yes. Oh, before I get a chance to close it, I know that there's probably a few questions out there as to, well, if I ran this, why can't I just save this as something? And it's a great and valid question. The save as saves a copy of the RPT itself. So in order to actually utilize that, you would have to go ahead and have Crystal Reports to be able to open it up and play with it, or you'd have to go ahead and re-register that particular RPT. So with that, we always say you want to export. Retail Pro Reports Viewer is exactly that. It's a report viewer, but we can go ahead and get that information into something a little bit more usable if we don't have Crystal Reports. So for example, I'm going to go ahead and export it to Excel using text only. Actually, I'll use text only. All right, and it opens it up in Excel and just kind of immediately starts writing to it. I open this here. And so what exporting via text only does, it just removes all the formatting. So if I had exported this to Excel normally, we'd see that big hairy dog little logo and like the blue line across the top. But I really don't need all that, especially if I'm going to go ahead and be manipulating my data any further. Anywhere where you see those little hashtags or little pound signs, going to be a spot where you need to open it up a little bit further. That's going to be the answer for anybody who is running a report and then you go down to your grand total and it's just a bunch of stars or, you know, those hashtag pound symbols. It just doesn't have enough space to display it. And so hopefully that's your you know, margin amount. But you're going to go ahead and throw it into Excel and just open it up so you can actually see that information. Or of course, give us a call. Let us go ahead and open up that that field for you in Crystal Reports a little bit more. Really all it is that you need somebody to go ahead and come in here. I'm going to holding down my shift button. I'm grabbing all of them underneath my thumb here, and I can go ahead and hold down my control button and shift it over. I'm going to use my hold down my shift button one more time on my keyboard and make it just a little bit bigger for us. And I can go ahead and actually then come on over here to my report. I'm actually going to close this. All right. I'm going to close this as well. So we don't really need to go ahead and be playing in Excel any further besides, you know, again, you can go and come in here, manipulate the data, add additional formulas without needing Crystal Reports at all. So we're going to go and close this. Don't save. And so I made a very, very minor edit to this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to file, I'm going to save as, and in that other directory, yep, I'm going to go ahead and just overwrite it. There we go. Now, because it already existed and it's already been registered, I didn't change the package. All I changed was a part of the report itself, a visual part of the report. I can just continue to use the same one and run the report. I'm actually going to run it with the exact same filters. I just wanted you guys to take note of this. The report file on the disk is newer than the database, or newer than in the database. Would you like to update it to the database? The answer to this is yes. Yep. So we're going to say yes, and we're going to have access to that new modified version of the report. And that's all you have to do. You might occasionally see that on reports that you've never run before. And usually that means that there's been a minor tweak or edit, and we've gone in and we've dropped in that new RPT. Or via a maintenance pack, Retail Pro's core has changed a little bit. And so the report on file is actually a little bit outdated. We just need to update it. So I'm going to go ahead and close this. All right. So I know that's been a lot. There's a lot we've gone over so far. I did want to go ahead and take a quick second to see if anybody had any questions or anything that they wanted a little bit of a clarification on. There's still a little bit that we need to go over, but I did want to take a second to go ahead and show you guys what it might look like to add a new parameter to a field or to a report that, you know, that the field just didn't exist in the package. All right, so it looks like we don't have any questions being typed out just yet. I'll keep an eye on that questions tab. Perfect. In the meantime, we're going to go ahead and minimize this. Remember, this was just my Retail Pro. I used it to go ahead and figure out which auxiliary field I needed, or really which UDF field that was. I'm going to go ahead and jump on out. All right. And so opening up my Crystal Reports one more time. So on this particular report, we have pretty much everything. Let me see. I do see C name, D name. Do they have S name? Okay, well, it does, but for the sake of our demonstration, let's pretend that it didn't exist. And we needed S name in here. So what I would need to do then is find out the exact package name. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click on the report. I'm going to go ahead and look at my set database location. I'm going to open this up. So I'm going to open it up, and I can see the owner. So this is what I'm looking for, but this is the actual package it's in. So my report summary 93287. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my PLSQL developer. So if you want to see that, PLSQL developer. we have access, so this is what it looks like just logging in. I'm already logged in, but I'm going to show you guys. We do have access to the R Pro ODS database. And so this is how we are, building these packages. And we're signing in as the reports user. The reports user password, is pretty standard, and it's going to be the same for everybody. I'm not sure if we have, people that you maybe don't want to be known on the webinar as well. I'm just kidding. But when we go through the actual training, we'll go ahead and show you how you can access the database if you need it. And I'm going to show you a few other things that for some people you might never actually want to do this, but we just want to make sure that you understand how everything connects. So I'm just going to close this. I don't need to show you guys any templates. But right now, I'm looking at my objects. And what I need to be looking at is my packages within that. And this was, I've already forgotten, my report summary 93287. So I'm going to go and jump back over here. All right, come on down to report summary 93287. There it is. So now that I've found the package that I'm looking for, I'm going to open it up, and I'm going to edit the spec and body. All right, and usually the bigger the monitor you have, the better this kind of thing is, the easier it is to see it all. But from within this, one more time, if I take a look, I need that SPS8 item sum. Come on over here. That SPS8, that's actually not the right one, so that means this is what I'm looking for. So I can go ahead and close that one. Edit spec and body. There we go, that's what I'm looking for. There it is. And there is that item summary. So within the item summary, this is the actual code, essentially, that the report is built off of. It uses these items. This is our filterable items. Those are our parameters, essentially. And then down here, this is where it all starts. I'm not going to walk you through absolutely everything. And, to an extent, I can't walk you through absolutely everything. I'm not a, programmer. I'm not a coder. But I know enough to go ahead and get things onto the package. And again, let's just say the S name is a good one here. So we had the D, we had the C, but we didn't have S. So an easy thing for me to do is just going to go ahead, and I know that the C name is being pulled from the exact same table in Retail Pro. So I'm going to go ahead and backtrack where my C name came from, and I'm going to go ahead and get my S name on the report that way. Now, when I say I know that they're part of the same table, what I'm referring to is, I'm going to go ahead and open this up in Tools, my Technicians Toolkit. We're going to go and get this guy open too. You guys signed up for a reports webinar. You didn't know what you were getting yourself into. All right. But here in my Tech Toolkit, I have my SQL shell. And remember that we have access to, or this is essentially our access to your data directly. They live here within these tables. And you have access to this because Retail Pro version 9 in Oracle is an open relational database. We have the ability to manipulate the data directly using these tables and this SQL shell. And because we can do that, I can see where these tables are housing information, how they're housing information is really the important part. So if I were to come down here and actually maybe come down to my inventory. All right, let's just jump into inventory. So this is the data form, what is currently in my inventory. You can see my item SID, these are my images. You can see I have additional information in additional tables. And all these tables work together to go ahead and pull up all of that information that I need when I need it. I'm actually going to go ahead and jump down to views instead of tables. I like working with them a little bit more. And usually for reporting, that's going to be what you're looking at anyways. All right, so my table, inventory underscore V. This is where I can get item level information, and this is how I would pull it onto a report. So we can select from inventory underscore V, attribute and size. We just have to make sure that we spell it correctly now. And then it knows exactly what to get. It knows exactly what we're looking for. It knows to pull ATTR for this item SID from this table. And those instructions are written here in the package. Like I said, this gets a little bit heavy and a little bit more than what we're going to go ahead and go over today. But I do want to go ahead and show you guys that this is how it's done. So all of these at the very top, the highest level, are going to be usable on the actual RPT. So they're going to be fields that we can pull in and out of the report using Crystal. A little bit further down under these from, you can see we have min D name as D name, D C name as C name. So this here is showing me that I'm pulling the department class and subclass name from a table that we've assigned the letter D to. And we can keep going and find that rabbit trail and really see how far this goes. But I will spare you guys a little bit too much of it. But again, this is also where all of the math happens, really. So if it does pre-calculate margin and price for you, we would build that into the code in one of the levels and then bring it up to that highest level as margin amount or margin percent. And so, I'm happy to go over this with anybody who wants to go ahead and dive into it a little bit more. If you guys already have Crystal reports, but you're finding you're needing to go ahead and add more items to the screen. The other thing I want to mention, though, is that within these packages, within this report summary 93287, there's actually quite a bit of packages. And chances are, if you really can't get what you need with that package, there's another package that's going to do what you need. So that's the other thing. I wanted to go ahead and close this out, jump back into my Crystal reports. I can actually go ahead and connect to my reports user here and see all of that same information that is in that SQL developer, just laid out a little bit differently. So if I have a report summary, this is actually one that I got a chance to edit. I know because I put my little L at the very end. But let's say I had, and it's usually what I do in order to go ahead and start cutting up a package. So I'm not quite sure it's going to work just yet. But let's say I cut up a package, I added whatever I needed to it, and so then I would just point this at my new item summary. And I would update this. And then it would point the entire report. It doesn't care what the old package had anymore. It just wants to know what the new package has. And it's going to ask you to go ahead and map anything that's missing. So if the new package, for whatever reason, didn't have size, we would have to then decide, what are we going to do? Do you want me just to drop size entirely and it'll be a blank? Or did you accidentally label size something different in this other package? So let's go ahead and just really quick, we'll update that. So subsidiary, we're going to go ahead and just put number 1. I like to hit enter from here because then it'll tell me what I have to do. Employee ID is also something that I absolutely have to do. Using the number 1 is always a safe bet. It's going to be your sysadmin account. Everybody always has one of those. We're going to say OK. And there we go. So this is what I was talking about. These are a few items that, there are a few items that exist in my report, but that don't exist in the new package I'm trying to point it to. And so I have to decide, is that okay? Do I have enough of what I need plus the additional items that I didn't have, or do I need to go ahead and go back and maybe start over? In this case, I'm going to cancel out of here because ultimately what I needed to edit was auxiliary 3. Cancel there and close. Okay. Now, pulling it back to what we can do within Retail Pro and within Crystal Reports, and kind of staying away from our SQL developer a little bit here. One more time, kind of jumping back into reports. I said you can rename, you can move, you can copy. You already have an entire set of reports that are pre-registered and thus have the proper parameters on there. So you can make copies, minor edits, and then re-register those reports. That's usually what we say if people are finding that they're running the same report, but they're running it 4 different times. We want this specific report. We've had it built for this vendor, but we realize that it can apply to all of these other vendors. So what we're doing is we're just running it ourselves every day, and we're running it for all 3 vendors that we need. Instead of doing that, let's go ahead and take the few minutes to copy the report. So let's just say it's going to be even our restock report is a good example. So our restock report, I love how it is right now. I want another version of it with just slightly different filters. So what I need to do is find this RPT, come back over here into my reports, other, what is that called? GOS. There. I'm going to go ahead and copy. I can paste that back in there. You see, instead of calling it copy, now I'm just going to rename it to whatever makes the most sense. Filter 1. And again, we can just register that report. We have exactly what the parameters are supposed to be. And then we can go ahead and keep separate filters. We can call it my GOS restock report, in parentheses, this vendor, or this store, whatever we want. And then we can go ahead and set that up to even run automatically. That's something I haven't talked about just yet, but it is over here on our list. So I know, like I said, we've been giving you a lot of information, but really we kind of just went over our common changes, layouts, a little bit of sorting we talked about in Excel, but also within Crystal, you can set this up to sort specifically. That's usually when we start to get a little bit more creative with the groups. It's going to be for that first layer of sorting. But if I were to go ahead and hit that, you see it says Record Sort Expert. I can see exactly what it's already sorting by. It's sorting by those 4 groups, and I can add any additional sorts that I want. So maybe in addition to all of this, then whatever's left over, I need you to sort that by a DCS code or by department. So we can just go ahead and throw it over. You see DCS code's already on there, department's already on there, which is why that didn't line up. Maybe auxiliary 3, the brand new one that I just added to this field. There we go. We'll throw that over, and it'll speak to whether it's ascending or descending. Okay. And then we just resorted that entire report. We can save it and just save it over what we already have registered. And that's it. Or, of course, export to Excel and sort it that way. For ranking and best sellers, that's also something that you can go ahead and do within Crystal, really easily. You can go ahead and sort, pre-select, so if we go ahead and have maybe a top 25, then I want my report to cut off after 25 records. That's it. It's what I need the report for. If I just wanted it to sort, much like while I'm over here, I'm going to go and plug another report that I really like. My best sellers ranked by margin dollar. So this does not cut off any of your information, but it does sort based on the margin dollar. So you essentially do have that list of your best sellers. If you stop reading after 10, that's your top 10. You can keep going and get all the way up until your least popular item. We also have these, actually right over here, best worst items by vendor. If you're ever running a report to check up on your vendors, I would definitely suggest running this report. Very, very helpful for a lot of people and a great example of those ranking and sorting options within Crystal Reports. We call that the hot cold items. If anybody's if anybody does have Crystal Reports and has been trying their best to click along, I apologize, I've been going so quick, but that hot cold items would definitely take a look at. and then filters. After that, I'm going to talk a little bit more about scheduling. I did want to go and be sure we do that today. But the filters is kind of what we were just talking about, being able to manage different filters. And it actually is going to be a good segue, because in order to automate reports, they do have to have permanent filters or default filters. And that way you don't have a bunch of reports that are just completely running open. For example, on this best worst items by vendor, if I jump into filters right over here, again, I can see those permanent default filters. It automatically drops you into elements. We have to go over to criteria. All right, so if I only wanted this report to, by default, only look at my active, I can come in here and turn that on. Also, by default, I only want you to look at I want to exclude a specific department code. So I don't want you to go ahead and anything under my demo department, I don't need you to look at. Everything else is a real department. My demo department, I use it for something specific, and I don't want that to be added to my best worst items by vendor list. And so I'm going to go ahead and select that, and I'm going to flip this over to exclude. And there we go. Now I can also go ahead and enter, let's see, maybe not a vendor code. Let's go ahead and do my date 1 here. The date 1, instead of a fixed period, because again, I want this to ultimately be something I can set up to run automatically, and I want it to grab the right information. So I'm going to use what they call, what they refer to as a dynamic date range. So I'm going to go ahead and use week to date. So week to date, from last Sunday to today. No matter what day I run, it's always going to pull from last Sunday to today. Whether that's going to grab me 2 days of information or a full week of information, depends on when I run it, obviously. But it has something that's always going to go ahead and pull the information that I'm looking for. So there we go. Maybe I set this to go ahead and run automatically every Friday. But we're going to go ahead and set up these permanent filters. I'm going to save that. Are you sure you want to save these changes? Yep. Yes. And now that I'm done saving these changes, I'm going to flip back to reports. It's going to drop me in the reports space right here. We're going to need to open that up. And let's see. Oh, actually, I was using my custom best worst items by vendor. And now if I run this report, it's automatically set up to that week to date, automatically set up to exclude that demo department, and it's automatically set up to only look at active records. Now I can absolutely change this at any time. So if at runtime I decide, you know what, I do want to go ahead and look at my demo department as well, I can do that. That doesn't change the permanent filter. The next time someone else comes in here to run this, they're going to have to go ahead and remove that DCS code, or it'll run while excluding it. All right, now I'm just going to go ahead and hit OK. And there we go. So it's running well, and it doesn't take too long. But ultimately, I don't want to have to do this every week myself. I'm going to set it up to run automatically, and I want it to drop into a directory of my choosing, or maybe I want it to email it to me. That's something that we can help you guys set up. The dropping it in a specific directory is probably the easiest to do, and that's because all that is essentially one of these guys. So I do have a little batch file. So a batch file is essentially something that we set up. We can help you, or we set it up, and it'll go ahead and run that specific report, and it'll run it with whatever default filters that it has. So I'm going to open this up for just a moment, my V9 reports daily batch. So I'm going to go ahead and edit. And this is all it looks like. So essentially, if Retail Pro is open, I want you to close it. And then I want you to run this. I want you to run my Retail Pro 9 reports viewer. I want you to sign in using this user and this password. So some of you might recognize this, the auto user. I absolutely love using the auto user for things like this. You know, we give them permission to run reports, we give them permission to run Tech Toolkit, but we don't give them the permission to do anything else in Retail Pro. So if somebody finds out what the auto user's password is, doesn't do much good in Retail Pro, but they can run a report. They can auto run this report specifically, but that's about it. Essentially, then the RPT is going to be just the name. So the name of the actual report gets put right here. This is the directory it's in. This is the file format that you want it to be exported in. So I want it to be exported as a PDF. And then this is where I want it dropped. In my R drive under V9 reports, in my case, I would switch R to C. Otherwise, I'm not going to go and get very far here. But that's about it. And that little S at the end just means that it runs silently. So we set up, it's essentially two parts. We set you up with this batch file, and then we set it up a Windows scheduled task. And so that's going to be the same thing that also runs your Delta and your backups for most people. I will say for most people. There are some people that, again, the Windows task scheduler is not what they use, and that's absolutely fine. For those people, we have other ways of automating their reports. But the blanket way of doing it is going to be via the Windows task scheduler. And we essentially just say, hey, every day at 7 a.m., I want you to wake up and I want you to run this batch file. And that's all the Windows task scheduler does, and the batch file takes care of the rest. And so when I walk in Monday morning, I'm going to go ahead and just check this folder on my C drive in my case, but for everyone else, it's going to be on the R drive. And my reports are going to be right there in PDF form, ready for me to go ahead and review them. Usually that's going to be even more helpful for like your end of the month reports, or if your accountant wants maybe the tax report every single week and you're just forgetting to go ahead and get it to them, you just let us help you automate that. So we're going to go ahead and close this. And you can see we have versions for monthly, we have versions for weekly, and so we can go ahead and get those ready for you and get them all set up. All right, so let's go ahead and close that there. All right, so yeah, that was still a lot, but not as much as our first section there. But we did go ahead and talk a little bit about, of course, creating reports, scheduling these reports. Now, lastly, we are down to troubleshooting. And so a big one that people will get is that nothing to print. For that nothing to print, usual culprits are going to be our filters, especially those permanent filters. If we go ahead and run this, and let's just say we didn't notice this exclusion, or maybe we just accidentally flipped this to include, and we didn't have sales in this particular department. You know, if we only ran it for this department and we didn't have sales in that department, we're not going to get anything to print. Or of course, if the filter that accidentally got messed up is all the way down here and we're not used to having to change them, that could be a big reason why it's not looking for it. Maybe active accidentally got flipped to no, which would mean we're only looking on a sales report, we're only looking at inactive items, where again, we're not going to get anything. You know, usually those mistakes are few and far between, but filtering is going to go ahead and be the first place I would look for a nothing to print. And of course, double checking, you know, if we are filtering to the right store, right department, or anything like that. Because the other thing, if a report was made specifically for one store, and if in the report is where we went ahead and entered that sort, then you know you can filter as much as you want in reports viewers. You're only going to get what Crystal Reports is letting you see. So you know, again, few and far between there, but filtering and sorting is the key when you're thinking about why do I have nothing to print when you should have items to print. The other thing it might be is our delta. You know, if our delta hasn't been updated in quite some time and the report really relies heavily on the delta, you might find that you're getting, or the report is running, but you're not getting updated information. I've actually seen that pretty recently with that inventory on hand by date. No matter what date we ran it for, it was displaying the exact same numbers. And it was doing that because the delta hadn't updated in a few weeks. So no matter what, it was just showing the latest update that it had. And so keep that in mind when you're dealing with that particular report and any of the statistics report. Besides that, the other error that you guys might run into is a failure to retrieve or a failure to connect to the database. So those ones are usually a little stickier, but there's a few things that we always like to check. So if you have Crystal reports and this is something that you've registered, a big thing is going to be checking that parameter and checking the parameter order. You actually see, here's a really good example of that. So this installation number is below my filter header and footer criteria. That means if I were to come over here and jump down to my journal with, journal summary with description 2, if I were to run that, and if I were to put a filter in my installation number, just go ahead and do 1. And I hit OK on that. Oh, well, make me a liar. Normally, if you filter for something that is beneath the header and footer criteria, you'll actually get a fail to retrieve. You know, obviously, normally, but this one, it allowed us to do it. I'm going to go ahead and take a look at that package in a little bit, but it's usually the key for new packages, especially if we've pointed the report at a different package, especially if you're going to a much bigger package. Chances are the header and footer criteria are going to be somewhere here in the middle and the rest of them are going to be below. If you want to utilize those filters, you want to actually go ahead and use them on the report, so we have to make sure the filter, header, and footer are below those items. And that's about it. In order to change that, for those of you who have already run into it, we're going to go ahead and right click and we're going to set the parameter order. And now there's another issue, especially for my computer. I have a much smaller monitor, and this does not actually have any kind of scroll bar functionality, right? So what I have to do is start dragging these down one by one. I've also changed the orientation of my laptop for a little bit and kind of moved it there. But you know, unfortunately, this is something that we have to deal with. It is not just a single error or anything like that. This unfortunately just does not have a scroll bar, and if you have a smaller monitor, you won't be able to go ahead and access those. You see, there's my UDF 12, and I have quite a few below that. But I could go ahead and highlight, and you see, just start taking it all the way down. And I can go ahead and keep doing that until I get my header and footer in the places that I want it to. Otherwise, I can just go ahead and arrow down here until I get to pretty much the end. And then I can go ahead and bring it back up. And you see, there, now he's back right there. So, like I said, nothing anybody's doing wrong. It just happens to be missing, in my opinion, an important little functionality piece there. But we can always go ahead and find our way around it. But I actually just cancel it out of there, so everything should be back to normal. The other thing, of course, is just that the package doesn't work, or something has broken within the package. A connection has been lost within the package. And you might occasionally get that if, let's say, your custom report was accidentally built off of or your custom report was pointed at a generic package, and that generic package was updated and no longer works with that custom report. Now, normally, we do go ahead and take the time to, you can see over here, write a version of the report. We do try to go ahead and put, something special at the end, especially if it's a custom one. We'll go ahead and put your name or something. But we are all only human, and of course there's bound to be that one that it didn't happen to. But we're going to go ahead and make sure that we get that report up and running for you again, and then of course give you your own package for it. All right. And so the subtotal run total and the what, when, not defined. So the what, when, not defined, that is going to be something that our V8 users are very, very familiar with. So in version 8, you essentially had a mini version of Crystal Reports as your reports module. Again, it was separate executable. But now that we don't have that mini version of Crystal Reports, you don't run into this what, when, not defined anymore because you don't have control over those subtotals. But that doesn't mean that you don't have access to that within Crystal Reports. Again, V8 was essentially Crystal Reports Lite. And so now here, in order to go ahead and create a summary, it's super easy. I absolutely love using Crystal Reports for this kind of thing. But over here, actually this is a good example of one, but over here what I did is I just highlighted under my details band here. And you see it's not even something that I'm showing. I'm actually suppressing this. But then I'm going to go ahead and insert a summary. I can also utilize my summary button that's right over here. I just like using it from within the form, within the page. You can also insert a running total. From there, you're going to decide where this is going to go. So we have 4 different groups in our grand total that this could be a subtotal for. And so if I were to go ahead and let's say I select my item SID here. So I wanted to group this by item SID. And so for those of you who, still hanging in there, that item SID grouping is just going to go ahead and catch any items that are in Retail Pro's mind the same item. So this, might not be a necessary step in some installations, but for like mine, for example, where my data can get really, really messy and I have different clients' data in here sometimes, reporting or filtering and summarizing by item SID makes sense. And so I'm going to go ahead and do that by item SID. I can select to add it to all group levels, or one of my favorites is show as a percentage of. So what I'm actually doing here is I'm showing at the item level for my sold quantity, I want it to show as a percentage of my grand total sum. All right, and so and that's actually this guy right here. I've already done this. But what this does is puts another line on the field so I can see how much of this item I've sold and how much of a percentage of my sales is that overall. So I'm going to go ahead, I can hit OK. You can see it pulls it right below it, and I can just move it over. We can delete my original one so we can just see what this new one looks like. I hit preview. So you can see in the time frame that it's running for, I've sold only 2 of these items, and that's about 1.2% of my sales total. So if we run this for a week, and then you see in that week you've sold 10, and it was roughly, 3% of your sales for the week, maybe, and then we can even sort this by, again, this field. We can go ahead and see what is really doing the most of our daily sales. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and say, of course, then we can also go ahead and insert summary and just do a regular straight summary. We can do a summary of my original price here, and I want that to just be subtotaled on my grand total. Maybe actually I want this one on my DCS. So by DCS code, I want you to go ahead and show me how much of my original price was. All right. Let me go ahead and remove that one for right now. And the same for really any of these. Besides that, our running totals are going to be the same. So if I go ahead and, can't summarize a summary. So if I go ahead and one more time insert, and then that running total, the running total is a little bit more, or there's a little bit more to the running total just because you can go ahead and decide, well, where it's going to go ahead and stop, if it's going to stop, what fields are available, or your available fields are going to be on this side, and we can just kind of highlight them and then throw them over. All right, let me go ahead and cancel out of here. The other thing that I like to go ahead and mention with people, just while we're kind of just talking about the minor edits that can be done in Crystal, a lot of the reports that we give you have a little bit of coloring on them to try to help the eyes. For people who need to print all of the reports and don't want to go and waste that ink. So one of the big things is going to be just to right click into the section, hit that section expert, coming over to the color, and just removing that background color. We're going to go ahead and hit OK. I'm going to do that over here as well. So again, section expert, color, remove that background color. If you see there's a little red, if this is red, really, and right now it's blue, it's a little hard to see, but the X times 2 might be a plus. X plus 2 is blue. If I go ahead and click that, I can open up my my formula. This is essentially my formula editor where I can workshop a few formulas. If it's red, that usually means that there's a formula in here that's actually affecting it. You know, I want to go ahead and share that with people because I wasted a good amount of time trying to figure out why I couldn't remove the background color and on the report, only to realize that's because it was written into the formula as to what colors to use. So, you know, be careful of that. Really, anywhere where you see that there's a formula, that means we've gone in and we've added something extra to it. And so just changing it over here is not going to go ahead and do anything because ultimately it will listen to the formulas that you put in. All right. But there we go. We've made a few minor edits to this. And again, we can always just save it and let it run from within our reports viewer here. All right. Now, odd data. So the odd data. So I would say, especially for like your tender reconciliation, tax reports, anything like that, if you see something that's odd or you think that it's not showing correctly, the first thing that we're really going to go ahead and do is start pulling it against the receipts for the day. You know, we have to go ahead and figure out where the problem is, narrow it down. If we can narrow it down to a receipt, we need to take a look at that receipt. What's going on with that receipt? What makes it different? Why is it reacting differently to the same exact package and, you know, the same formulas that every other receipt is working on? The other thing, and it's because I've noticed it lately, I've had somebody come up and realize that our tender rec is just a little bit off, you know, and a lot of it can be chalked up to rounding, you know, just minor rounding. But for a bigger discrepancy, we do want to go ahead and take a look. You know, this is a reports trading, and one of the big reports is going to be that XZ out report. Your Z out report is going to be that hard line in the sand. That is, you know, what is accurate. It's pulling from your receipts, and is so long as we've put the receipts into Retail Pro appropriately, that is what it thinks that you should have in your inventory or in your drawer, and that is what the numbers look like to Retail Pro. End of the day. In our custom reports and in our even just journals or anything else like that, we also have our tax and tender reports. And like I said, some of it just a little bit off due to rounding or anything like that. I have seen some people get into some sticky situations where they went in and they removed a field and they were not aware that that field was actually part of a bigger formula, and they just kind of okayed through whatever additional pop-ups that came up to let them know that, you know, they were removing a formula from the field, and it kind of threw off a little bit of their numbers. But, you know, again, keep that in mind as you're going through it, but the XZ out is going to be the end-all be-all. And if you do have any issues with any of your reconciliation reports, let us know, and we can go ahead and troubleshoot and help walk you through it. I think everybody who's had an issue, we've managed to clear them up. Um, but like I said, if you're out there and you need some help, let us know. All right. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and say one more time, do we have any questions? Like I said, I know we went over a lot, but we've covered packages and how they relate to what you can do within Crystal Reports. We've gone a little bit over Crystal Reports, not a full Crystal Reports training, but what can be done in Crystal Reports and or what can be done outside of Crystal Reports and what really does need Crystal Reports. Besides that, in your reports viewer, you can go ahead and export. You can import reports to it. I don't think that's something that I talk too much about. But if you have somebody else who is also a Retail Pro 9 user and they have a report that you've been really wanting to try, if they exported that report and you imported it, and it's not working for you, chances are you don't have the package that they have. And again, we can go ahead and figure that out for you and we can help make that connection. Or if you have a report at store A that is working beautifully and it's fantastic, you take that same report and you imported it at store B and it's not working. Again, that's going to be a package. And so we're going to go ahead and need to figure out what package that is and just get it registered on the machine that we need it registered on. So all very doable. All right, like I said, I know I've been talking a lot. We're going to give a second for any questions. I know we still have a handful of people who hung through all of that, so thank you so much for joining me today. I'll be here for a while, so if anybody thinks of anything, go ahead and let me know. Ultimately, this was recorded and will be sent out to everybody in attendance today, and anybody who's registered will also be available on our website in the previously recorded webinar section as soon as possible. We have a little bit of a queue, so it might be a slight delay, but we'll get them out as soon as possible. And again, for those of you who hung on long enough, these are the reports I was referring to, our aging reports, aging 6 months and aging 90 days, broken out by DCS, item style, and vendor. There's some of our newer reports, and if you don't have them as part of your core reports, please let us know. We'll get you these reports. I think they're really, really handy. I just spent a lot of time perfecting these guys, and you don't have to do all of them if you only want the 6 months, or if you only want the 6 months by item and the 90-day by vendor. It's up to you. All right, but thank you again so much for joining me. I'll be hanging out for a second, but if there are no questions, then I hope everyone has a great rest of their day. right, then I'm going to go ahead and dismiss us. Again, thank you all for joining me. This was Liz, Big Hairy Dog. If you do have any last minute questions that anybody thinks of, feel free to go ahead and email me. It's going to be LIZM, as in Massachusetts, at bighairydog.com. Thanks so much. Have a great rest of your day.